You know, Betty White really is the greatest Golden Girl. Choosy parents choose Jif. He's so mean! He really is. Hey Ryan, are we out of partisan again?
Now, let's sit back, relax, mind our P's and Q's, and raise a glass to our Toastmasters, Ryan and Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Brewmaster, and welcome to Beer and Politics. We are indeed your Toastmasters, Ryan and Ryan.
Beer and Politics is brought to you by your local Dilly Dally's neighborhood store. Dilly Dally's. We don't just waste time, we waste your time.
We think you're going to enjoy what's on tap for today. Today's segment is called That's Tomi to Me. So for those of you who don't know, Tomi Lahren is a conservative pundit with a show on the Blaze. She's gotten pretty popular recently, and she posts what she calls final thoughts on Facebook, and she gets millions of hits. So what we want to do is kind of take a look at what she says and decide if we think she is drunk or sober. What we're looking at today is going to be from her final thoughts that were based on the interview with Trevor Noah on The Daily Show. Right, but before we begin, we're just a couple of guys, it's a laid-back show, we want to discuss some beer. We have a delectable brew here today. This is a citrusy wit from a relatively local brewery. It's a pretty rocky brewery, from what I understand. Agreed. Smells light. Yep. Refreshing. Yep. It's not heavy. No, it's crisp, actually. There is a lot of the citrus. I definitely taste that. There's some of that citrus bite. I think this would be more of a, I could consider this a session brew. Sure, I could definitely drink a bunch of these. Great. Anything else you'd like to add? Not now. I think let's get going. Sounds good. Madam Brewmaster, what's our first topic?
Tomi says the left is loving and tolerant as long as you agree with them. If you don't agree, they're not very tolerant and will call you a bigot or racist. Drunk or sober?
You want to start? No, you should start. By all means. All right. I think she's pretty sober here. I actually have a BAC of 0.01. I think the left absolutely will call you a bigot or a racist if you don't agree with her worldview of equality and tolerance. And I do want to point out, I think she's had a little bit to drink. That's the 0.01 here. It is because if you don't subscribe to a worldview of equality and tolerance, you then expected to be treated with equality and tolerance. That also seems a little bit hypocritical to me. So it's funny that you went with a 0.01 because I was torn on this one. I was curious if she was going to be sober or drunk because her words at face value I agree with. Yeah. They will label you a bigot or a racist. I actually went with a tipsy 1.2 because I was so torn. All right, because I think she was free and loose with the way she presented this. All right, so it's just really how we kind of looked at this differently. Because what she's implying isn't so much that they're labeling you a racist or a bigot. Okay. It's that they're resorting to name calling. That's what she's really implying here because she can be divisive. So she didn't give us an example, so we can't nitpick and figure out, what she's referring to exactly because maybe it was name calling. Right. But if we take it at face value, we look at, she says for a fact, the left is loving and tolerant. She doesn't say they think they're loving and tolerant, or they pretend to be, but they actually are, right? So they're loving and tolerant, and if we look at that from a political view, which is where we should be, because that's what she does, that's what we're doing today, is they're typically loving and tolerant to LGBTQ rights, to racial equality, religious equality, women's rights. So if you disagree, or are contrary to their loving and tolerant ways, then them labeling you as a bigot, if you're intolerant towards LGBTQ rights, and keep in mind bigotry is an intolerance, right? And
it's a word, it does have a definition.
It does, clearly it does, and we talk about that a lot. And if you are intolerant towards a race, you would be racist, possibly.
Maybe.
So, while they might be labeling them, they might be doing it strictly out of observations. Like if I said, you know what, Ryan is a kind-hearted person, or he's mean-spirited, or he's furry. I am observing you, and I'm giving you a label because words have meanings, and it communicates something.
So I would argue, and the reason it's only tipsy, because again, the statement is correct, I would argue that the issue, if you have an issue as a conservative being labeled that way, maybe it's not about the liberal. Maybe it's about you and your actions.
Interesting.
All right.
Good wrap. By the way, I want to say that I'm really excited to do this show.
Me too.
We've had a lot of time trying to figure out what our talking points would be, and we haven't discussed any of these, and it's been hell.
Right. Because we always discuss politics.
All right. I think we're good. So how about the next item?
Madam Brewmaster.
Tomi says the left has many double standards. Anger versus passion. When the left makes a point, it's passion, and when the right makes a point, it's anger. Drunk or sober?
I'll take the lead on this one.
All right.
I'm going to say she is drunk at about a 1.6. She shouldn't be driving.
0.16?
No, 1.6.
Whoa, okay.
Right? So, I mean, she's drunk, she shouldn't be driving, but we've all been there. We know someone who's been far more drunk than she is, all right? And the reason is, and this is, you're going to find this when I discuss all of her topics,
okay,
is how kind of free and loose she is with her words. So what she's trying to do is deflect away from her anger, all right? So she did that by saying liberals, or the left, will choose arbitrarily what they want based on what you believe. That may or may not be true, but the only reason she brought it up at all is because Trevor Noah asked her why she was angry. So I'm going to tackle it like, is she angry or not? Who cares how we would label her? I think we can actually figure out if she's angry.
Okay.
So she's really smart here because she chooses passion and anger. So I researched passion and anger because, as we discussed, words have meanings.
They do. And
they're very similar. They both are intense feelings. The difference being, anger is a response of antagonism or hostility towards something or someone. And I think if you watch her, especially in her final thoughts, that is what you see. And if you tried to argue against me, I'm going to say you can look at the verbal tools she used to represent her points. She uses sarcasm and condescension.
Yeah.
I would argue that both of those are clearly antagonistic tools verbally. Actually, when I looked up sarcasm, it means to cut. Condescension is to portray yourself as superior to someone else. So I think she's clearly antagonistic. What she wants, and the reason she tried to deflect, I think, is she wants us to overthink it.
Yeah.
She picked two words that are very similar, and that's how we can arbitrarily decide if we're liberals or conservatives what we want to do. But sometimes you can just look at it and tell what it is. Let's not overthink it. She presents in a very angry fashion.
You know, I'm going to agree in a lot of ways. I'm going to say I gave her kind of halfway between drunk and sober. I gave her a 0.04, so she's getting close to that legal limit, but not quite there. And this is why. Kind of like what you were saying. She's definitely passionate. I'm not arguing that she isn't passionate, but she is also angry. They are not mutually exclusive.
Right.
And I think if she doesn't believe she's angry, she doesn't know where her bread's buttered.
Right. You could call it pandering.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So if you want an example of passion, you can look at Howard Dean in 2004, just before he crapped away the Democratic nomination. That was passion. It was also a little bit crazy.
That's why he crapped it away.
But it was passionate. That was not angry.
Right.
There is a very big difference. You look at that and you look at Tomi, and actually the other point I had was like if you add condescension to passion, that's when you get anger. She is doing that. She is talking down. Yeah.
I think you nailed something here when you said they're not mutually exclusive. We're going to find, as I talk, that she presents lots of things as if they're mutually exclusive. Even if you go back to the loving and tolerant segment.
Right.
Right? She's treating name-calling and labeling different than as that they can't be one and the same.
Right.
Right? They're mutually exclusive. You're either name-calling or you're loving. Right? Well, no. Maybe you are labeling and loving.
Right.
Describing.
Right. Right. We have labels for a reason.
Exactly.
Because they describe things.
Good point.
All right. So I think we're good here. Want to go on to the next point?
Please.
Madam Brewmaster.
Kellyanne Conway would be a hero if she were a Democrat. But because she's a conservative, her achievements are cast aside. Same for Tomi and conservative people of color. Since they don't subscribe to the Democrats, the worldview they're painted as Uncle Tom's. Which party is racist? Drunk or sober?
I'll start. Sure. She is drunk. and she's bordering on sloppy here. So here's the thing. This has nothing to do with being a conservative. What Tomi is describing here is identity-only politics. And what that is that the only thing that matters is your gender, or the only thing that matters is your race. So she's talking about things, again, like they are mutually exclusive. You see, we don't celebrate you just because you're a woman. We don't celebrate you just because you're black. You actually have to do something else. So, for instance, we wouldn't celebrate a woman if in 1919 she mounted a successful campaign against women's suffrage, because we would consider that a bad thing. It doesn't matter that she was a woman and did something that was extraordinary. She did something terrible, right? The same way that we wouldn't celebrate a successful black CEO if he decided to ship every job but his own overseas. See, you don't get a pass for doing something shitty just because you're a woman or a minority. You actually have to do something good. And you see, the Democrats see Trump as a horrible thing. So it's logically and morally consistent not to praise someone for helping him get into office. It has nothing to do with her being conservative. It has everything to do with her doing something shitty. Next, I'm gonna tackle the which party is racist. So I'm gonna have you guys look up a couple things if you haven't already. Maybe you're not familiar. One, we'll start with the Southern strategy. If the 1990s are too far back for you, we can go a little more recent and see which justices decided to strike down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Did they lean liberal or conservative? Next, we can see if after it was struck down what the makeup of the states were, if anyone made new voting laws, and if they did, what the makeup of those states were. And the last thing, if they tried to pass any laws, or if they did because they now could, if they passed any laws that had previously been rejected under Title V as discriminatory.
What's Title V for everyone?
Title V is the portion of the Voting Rights Act that said states with a history of racial discrimination could not make changes to their voting laws without approval from the Department of Justice.
So you're saying, with regards to Title V, what?
That one particular leaning struck it down.
Gotcha.
States, you should also then, immediately laws started being passed. You should look at the makeup of those states, if they lean Democratic or Republican, liberal, conservative, and then you should see if any of the laws that passed had already been rejected under Title V as discriminatory. And if so, which party pushed it?
I see. So Title V is discriminatory or not?
Pardon?
Is Title V discriminatory or not discriminatory?
Title V is saying it is discriminatory. Like you have to have your laws approved as not discriminatory.
Okay, there you go. So you're saying some states wanted to continue being discriminatory, or at least not have someone have oversight over that.
Yes.
And which states were those? Okay, excellent.
And those are my thoughts.
Excellent. So this is fun because I agree. She's sloppy. I have her at a 2 now. Sorry, 0.2.
There you go.
0.2. She's pretty sloppy. And I went back and forth on this one a little bit because she chooses her words. I'd almost say, well, it's wisely for the people for her audience, I think, her target audience. But she's drunk, and I'm going to take this from a different angle because she doesn't know what a double standard is. She calls it all a double standard. She does not have a clue what a double standard is. So she's saying, to what you said, liberals don't support Kellyanne Conway. But if Kellyanne Conway was liberal, they would.
Right.
Right? She's saying that's a double standard. No, that's the standard. That's what the standard is. I don't support someone whose views are so contrary to mine that I might call them scary. I might call them dangerous. So I'm not going to support you. And you know what? Conservatives feel the same way.
It's true. I didn't see a lot of conservatives supporting Hillary Clinton because she was a woman.
Right. Or that she's just the opponent. Who cares?
Right.
She's the opponent. The standards to not support the opponent. You can look at sports, right?
Yeah.
If you are a fan of a sports team, do you respect any other sports teams? No. I don't care how good their record is. They suck.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm clearly
and their fans suck.
A Redskins fan. I hate the Cowboys. I don't care how good their record is. They suck. You know what would happen, though? If they traded me a good player and they became a Redskin, I'd support them because I support my team.
It's good.
So the double standard, in this case, if she was going to use it accurately, would be, I don't respect Kellyanne Conway, but I want you, or I expect you to respect Hillary Clinton. If that was the case, then that would be a double standard. But it's not the case. They don't expect a conservative to respect Hillary Clinton and her accomplishments. They might want it, they might demand it, but they don't expect it. So that's double standard number one.
Right.
Number two, she didn't just say she deserves applause for being a political talk show host. She's saying she's a young, blonde woman political talk show host, and so her accolades should be recognized by the liberals. I'm just curious what skill set is actually required to be a political talk show host. Because we're doing it right now. I'm not sure I have a skill set for it, but we're doing it. Now, the argument would be she has more subscribers, more viewers, etc.
Sure.
You know who has more subscribers and viewers than she does? The Kardashians. The folks from Jersey Shore. Is she really going to concede that they have a better skill set or talent than she does?
Or maybe they're just more popular.
Maybe they're more popular. So don't hurt yourself patting yourself on the back too much. And number three, she talks about conservative blacks being called Uncle Toms by the liberal media. I can't imagine a mainstream liberal media source actually calling a black man an Uncle Tom, knowing that the majority of minorities lean towards liberal. I think they would do that at their peril. I think they go out of their way not to come right out and say certain things.
Because there's also the accusation that the left and the liberals are overly politically correct.
Exactly.
So which is it?
Right. So it can't be both. So if she is talking about it, I'd like to see the article that she's referring to from the mainstream liberal media. And I have to say that because she's talking about the fringe. You know why they're called the fringe? Because they don't represent a large group of people. So you can't call them all liberals.
Right.
Right? They're the fringe. No, the liberals are the mainstream liberals. That's the big group that we're talking about. So, and we know that the further out to the fringes you go, the more likely you're going to have crazy people and people with such strong ideologies that they border on hate.
Yep.
And so she is a sloppy 0.2 drunk.
Nice.
Anything else?
I think we're good so far.
Madam Brewmaster, what's next?
The Muslim killer from Ohio State is misunderstood, while a couple believing in traditional marriage is unfit for TV. Drunk or sober?
I'm going to take this. She is crazy blackout drunk. She's so drunk, I don't even understand the comparison. I don't know why a Muslim subject terrorist is related to whoever this couple that doesn't support same-sex marriage. I don't know what that has to do with anything. He's on the news because he did something tragic and scary and newsworthy. They labeled him misunderstood, which for whatever reason she doesn't like, because he felt misunderstood. I think that's how we identify motives, right?
Right.
So if he felt like he was ostracized, if his voice wasn't being heard, if he wasn't part of a group, if he felt he was targeted for being a Muslim, and he couldn't convince anybody of these feelings and talk to somebody about this, then yeah, misunderstood is good, because that's the only way we can solve that problem. You have to label it something and then try to tackle that. The same-sex, the couple that's against same-sex marriage, if it's not news, then it's entertainment. And we've talked about this before. Media in general is there to make money. That's why they exist. TV will put just about anything on. If you talk about people who have views that are divisive or even extreme, we could say Al Sharpton shows up on TV. We could say Billy Graham shows up on TV. We could say the Duggars show up on TV. We even have a reality TV show about polygamy. Yeah. If someone's willing to buy it, someone is willing to sell it. So if you have a couple that the only reason they're not on TV is because they don't support same-sex marriage, I'm going to argue they're not entertaining, they're not interesting, they're not funny, or they're not a number of things that somebody is willing to buy. And yeah, I said crazy drunk. Black.
Yep. So I also gave her drunk. I gave her a 0.08. But I feel like I need to be a little higher on it now in my reconsiderings. But I'm going to tell you this. I saw some coverage about, the Muslim killer guy, or attempted murderer. And I never saw anything that labeled him as misunderstood. I saw things that I saw coverage that said that he felt misunderstood. And labeling someone something and explaining how they feel are very different things. You can feel misunderstood, but not be misunderstood. Like if you're angry and you want to kill people, we can understand that's a thing. But you know, furthermore, the coverage after they explained he felt misunderstood then went on to talk about how he tried to murder a bunch of people. This is hardly a liberal bias. This is not Muslim apologetics. This is nothing. This is actually what news is. It's reporting things and talking about motives. Because yes, if you want to stop something, you need to understand why it's happening in the first place. So there's that. And you know, she's correct at face value. I think this is why I kind of toned it down a bit. I'm still going to get it back. So here's the deal. Her face value thing of liberals not wanting people who support traditional marriage on TV, she is correct in that. And that's because, again, if you look at their worldview of inclusiveness and tolerance and equality, then people who stand on a soapbox and support legally mandated inequality, why would they support that? Why would they say, yeah, that's good, we want that? No, it doesn't make sense. Additionally, this is a private business here that makes a business decision based on their bottom line. It's because there are enough people who don't want to watch this that it's not going to make them money. So this has nothing to do with media. Well, it has to do with media in that it's being broadcast over airwaves, but this is business. This is a business decision. Just like if Tomi had one subscriber, she wouldn't be on the Blaze.
Right.
Yeah, and that's so. I'm going to up it a little bit.
What are you going to?
I'm going to go to 0.15.
Oh,
that's pretty drunk. It's pretty drunk.
Pretty drunk.
Yeah.
All right,
Madam Brewmaster, our next topic.
Tomi says the left believes it has a lock on moral superiority. Drunk or sober?
I'll start.
Okay.
She's stone cold sober.
Okay.
The left absolutely does believe it has a lock on moral superiority. What she's overlooking is that so does the right. Everyone believes their morals are the best. Every single person believes that. And here's the thing. If you don't believe me, you can look at any morality-based law. Prostitution. It's going to be controversial, but abortion. You could look at, traditional marriage. Any law based on your morals is evidence that you believe you know better. It means you know best and other people's opinions don't matter. So yeah, everyone believes they have a lock on moral superiority. Now the big difference with, let's say for instance, a traditional marriage law, is that the point of the right is this is what we believe we know best, we believe we are morally superior, so you can only do what we say. If you are a gay couple, you cannot get married. You are unable to do these things. Whereas the point of the left is we believe we are morally superior, we believe we have a lock on this, and our worldview is loving and tolerance. Make the decision for yourself. Yep. That's the difference. Right. So she's sober, yeah, I mean, but she's just overlooking an enormous amount of stuff.
Sure. So I went with sober.
Okay.
At a 0.079.
Okay.
Because I think, again, at face value, yes, her statement is accurate. I actually agree with everything you just said, right?
Okay.
You know, I always say my opinion is the best opinion, because why would I hold an opinion that is not the best, right? So, so same thing here, but what she did, which is clever, is she chunked it up. All right, so remember I always say she's trying to be divisive.
Yep.
Mutually exclusive, all or nothing.
Yep.
And that's what she did here. So by chunking it up, she took what morality is typically an individual thing. So she took an individual thing and made it a group thing. So she chunked it up. And all we can do is choose yes or no. And if we choose they are morally superior, well, then conservatives are upset. If we say they aren't, then liberals are upset. So, how can we chunk it up objectively? And this is what I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. We can do it this way. Is if I asked you, if let's say you're a liberal, are you morally superior than me if I'm a conservative? You're going to say, well, no, you're my friend. No, I'm not going to say that, right? There's all these individual views about how that works. But if I said, are your policies morally superior to mine? You're probably more apt to say, yeah, I think they are, because I do support all these various things and equality. And then if I disagree with you, we have a discussion, a political discussion, a policy-based discussion. But if we don't chunk it up to the policy level, what we have are judgments. And we've created individual judgments about morality. And that is her intent.
Based on entire groups.
Right. Exactly. All or nothing. So she's right. I think they would say morally superior. But I think we can avoid the individual judgments if we say, are your policies morally superior? And I think it's interesting that she didn't do that.
Yeah.
So, Madam Brewmaster, what's next?
Tomi says the alt-right is a thing, but criticizing a person of color, or BLM, doesn't make you part of the alt-right. Drunk or sober?
Mostly sober, if we take that face value, 0.04. I just said, I don't know, there's always a tinge of drunkenness to her, so she will never be 0-0 to me. At least not in this discussion. So she's mostly correct because, right, you being racist doesn't mean you are conservative. It just means you're racist. And me liking equality for women doesn't make me liberal. I might have very conservative views outside of that. So the alt-right does exist. It is a thing. One of the things she tried to say is that it was made up by the liberal media, which may or may not be true, but the only thing I'm going to say is that Stephen Bannon, who is the executive chairman of Breitbart, which is at the very least a conservative media outlet,
At least.
has admitted to ties to the alt-right. He might have even referred to Breitbart as a platform for the alt-right. So this conservative man is acknowledging that the alt-right exists. So she tried to say that's a liberal thing that's made up to label people negatively. He's embracing this. So I just disagree with her on that. But the general statement of the alt-right exists, and just because you're racist doesn't mean you're part of the alt-right, that's true.
Or just because you criticize.
Or just because you criticize.
Doesn't mean you're part of it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Alt-right is it's becoming more and more of a specific thing. But at this point, you can still be an individual with certain views that don't make you part of the alt-right.
So, I agree. She is relatively sober, but I tell you what, man, I'm up on my percentages here, because she's right at face value. Like at face value, you can criticize someone and not be a racist. The alt-right is a real thing. Maybe if you don't know, the alt-right really is just a rebranding of white supremacists to try to hide how vile they really are. And you know, Tomi doesn't strike me as a white supremacist, right?
Correct.
So I agree. Yeah. And so yeah, you can criticize people and not be a white supremacist. But something else is that there are many shades of racism.
Sure.
And it can be like there's the overt stuff that the alt-right does, and then there's the less overt stuff like trying to get black people not to vote or something like that. Things that are racially motivated because maybe it's a political outcome and you don't focus specifically, but it ends up being discriminatory. I want to say, I think everybody is a little bit racist. It's not okay though, and how we deal with that, I think, is really important. And what we try to do with that information is important, and realizing that what we are doing may in fact be a little bit racist.
Right. And it goes back to, again, the first point.
Right.
Of you can say bigoted and racist things without per se being a
and
racist.
overt, yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree here. All right, next up,
Madam Brewmaster.
Tomi says the election was not lost because of Whitelash. The election was lost because center-right, hard-working, middle-class Americans across every race, gender, religious, and social spectrum were sick and tired of being told they were less than or unimportant. Drunk or sober?
So I'll start us here.
Good.
Tomi, you need to lay off the sauce. She is hammered. Now, I'm not going to comment about Whitelash. You know, that's something that was kind of just made up. You know, it's to describe. It's going to be way too much to talk about, way too deep, whether it was or wasn't. And I'm going to leave that aside. But what she's insinuating here is that this was a large movement. And I'm going to say Trump won two groups. He won men and he won white people. He won men overall by 12 points. He won white men by 32 points. He won white women by 10 points, but overall he lost women by 12. He also lost every other group, and he lost them badly. So for her thing to make sense, that means that there would have had to be a lot of black people, a lot of women, a lot of Muslims, a lot of Hispanics, a lot of LGBT people voting for Trump. And that is a stupid assertion. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. This had nothing to do with race, gender lines, stuff. These aren't people coming across from all these spectrums to vote for Trump. Because keep in mind, at this point, we're actually approaching nearly 3 million more votes for Clinton. So it wasn't even across lines. It wasn't even most Americans. Most people didn't want Trump. Most people wanted someone else. And whether you agree with the policies or not, you can't overlook that. You can't say that is not the case. And I also want to point out here that Americans, they did not elect Trump. Our system did. In any other presidential or national election, in any other country, they don't have the Electoral College. In every other country, Clinton wins. In every other race in the United States, whether it be Senate, everything else, all of the other elections are popular vote. Clinton wins. This is not a referendum. This is not people coming together and saying we're done with the system. This is the system electing your candidate, and nothing more.
I don't have the time to discuss the system today. But I will say, for me, actually I'm going to start off by saying you disappointed me a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
Mainly because you didn't want to tackle Whitelash, and I wanted you to tackle Whitelash.
Oh, okay.
But we are marginally researched.
Right.
Or minimally researched. So I'm going with a .079.
Okay.
Mainly because I don't know enough to tell if she's lying or not.
Okay.
So maybe I'm just as drunk or just as sober as she is. She got by. I asked her for her keys and she said she's fine to drive, and I said, you might be. That's what happened here.
All right.
Okay, so in order for Whitelash to be proven or disproven, but let's just say it's disproven, which is what she is arguing, you would have to show that minorities disproportionately voted for the Republican candidate in this election year than they did in any previous election year. And I don't know, I know I didn't do that study for statistics, and now I know neither did you. I was hoping you would. But so I don't know if Whitelash is a thing, if it really exists. She's trying to argue that it's not a thing because she's saying minorities voted for Trump. She would have to actually go a step further to support Whitelash not existing, because she would have to show us that they disproportionately voted in this election more so for the Republican candidate than in previous elections. And that they would have to be the middle class, which she stated that, and you probably have to look at swing states, because as you pointed out, the popular vote, Trump did not get.
And I will jump in too, because the middle class, people maybe, the middle class, they voted for Trump. Like, they probably did, but the thing is that a majority of the middle class is white. Because white people are a majority of the population. Whereas if you look at black middle class, there's no segment of black people that voted for Trump.
So, to that point, I forgot, there's another thing. So they have to be disproportionately larger. They have to be in the middle class, probably have to be in the swing states because they didn't get the popular vote, and the disproportionality actually still has to be material. So what I mean by that is, if twice as many black people voted for Trump this year than they did in previous elections, but the total was 4 black people to 2, That's not material.
Right.
They didn't sway it. Yeah, it's proportionately more, but they didn't sway the vote.
Right.
And she didn't offer any evidence. She just said that's the case. I would bet it's not the case, kind of to your point. And I think this election was not even about Whitelash. I think the reason she's .079 is because I think she is right in that there was a certain group of people that feel like they are not getting benefited by the government and by companies, etc. But this election was about the Democrats choosing an established person that wasn't just established, was so opposite of the Republican view. And America, through all the primaries, made it clear that they wanted change. We know Bernie Sanders was competitive in a lot of ways.
Which is crazy.
Crazy.
What other year would he have been competitive?
Right. As an independent, well, he's trying to be Democrat, but we know he's an independent.
Right.
Right? We know that he pulled very well against Trump. Trump only exists because we wanted change. And the Democrats not only put someone who's established up there, they were totally, and this is why I agree with her on the .079, they're out of touch with America. She didn't even campaign in the swing states that she needed to campaign in at the end of the day.
Thought they were in the bag.
Right.
Yep. You know, actually, to that point, I will raise my beer to her reasoning. Now, what she said is way off. But the idea that people felt less than or unimportant, primarily the middle class and middle America, she is right.
Right.
They did feel that way. And the difference is that Trump came by to pick up the white pieces.
That's awesome that you said that. Well, I am all out of talking points. What say you?
I'm done.
All right. Well, with that in mind, I think it's time to look at our coal-filtered, barrel-aged words of wisdom.
I want to thank you guys for watching us today here at Beer and Politics. If you like it, subscribe.
We're hoping to come out shortly as well with a podcast, so if you don't have time to view at work, maybe you can just listen.
We'll put everything in the show notes. Thanks again.
Cheers.
It was fun.
Good.
Real good.
It wasn't like politics.
Or beer.